Hey Hill City, we are continuing our focus on worship. We're going to interview Jen. We're going to talk a little bit about it and just broaden our view of worshiping God. I think this is really pertinent to our relationship with God, because sometimes we can corner what worship is and think that if we only participate with God in a certain way. Rather, I want us to broaden our view of how we worship God and in how it connects to our lives. And so I think this is a real important thing to talk about. So I just want to begin by talking to Jen to kind of speak to us again about the 3 types of worship, and then we'll go into our conversation from there. Go ahead, Jen.
Sure. So the first type of worship that we discussed was, what I would call upward worship, where it's something that we're very accustomed to when we're together in church. We're vocal, we're singing together, we're unified, we're lifting our hands and we're praising God. That our spirit recognizes that God is worthy, and we cannot do anything but vocalize how we feel by worshiping Him. The second type of worship, I would say, is an outward type of worship in the way that we live our lives, the way that we treat other people, the way that we love people for Jesus, how we are living ethically at our places of work, how we are treating our friends. That is how we glorify God, through our lives and the way that we live our lives. The third type of worship is the worship that I really wanted to focus on, and that was the worship that pointed more inward. It was more of a God-centered, focused type of worship, but we are looking at and connecting with God in a rest place, in the place of peace in His presence, and where He calls us to live from and to find refuge and safety. And when we are resting in that place and living our lives from that place, it's not hard. Being loving to people for Jesus at our places of work is not hard. Loving our children, being patient with our family, those things become easy when we connect to God first and live the rest of our lives from that place.
That's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Why do you think, as we're talking about these, why do you think that internal worship more so gets put on the back burner? Why is it so hard to make time for that versus those other types of worship that maybe we're a bit more familiar with, or we make a priority in our lives?
I think that we're all human, and we can sometimes just get caught up in the busyness of things. And so, if we put it in the schedule to go to church, then we go to church and we just participate with what's going on. If we have a job, which most of us do, we just go to our job and we do the things that we have to do. But in order to really, I would say, bring God into those things, it's the connection first, and that inward focusing on God and connecting to Him in that secret place where it's just you and Him, and you are fully aware of who He is in your life, and then you move through your life in those other places. So I think because it takes extra effort and intention to make that happen is where it can go wayward. You have to intentionally make time to say, God, here I am, thank you for this day. I invite you into this day, and I'm going to live this day with you. And you are connected to God, and then it carries with you throughout the day. It carries with you in whatever you do through the day, and it carries with you when you come together with other people corporately to worship God.
Yeah. I call that like God as your operating system. It's not my words. I know we talked about it with Pete Scazzaro, but like, what would it look like if we changed our operating system instead of God being something we input here and there, but we live out that our life is worship to God. It is the operating system that we work, we sing, we parent, we are generous. And so I really do believe like discipleship is like that changeover of I don't want to call it firmware or hardware, but a changeover of like what we're operating on. Like, what's the purpose of our lives? And I think the outflow of that is beautiful worship. And I think we can go into a deeper thought of that. But what would it look like if we operated out of like worshiping God, or what you said, this contemplative secret place? At our core, we believed that everything came out of this operating system with God, this relationship with God. Yeah.
Well, I had said it before in the sermon, but it is what God intended from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
He intended, when He created us, for us to have that type of relationship with Him. And sin separated us from having that type of relationship. And when Jesus died, it opened, it tore the veil. It opened up that Holy of Holies where He was inaccessible. And He is laying it out as a relationship that is open to anyone.
Yeah.
It's not for certain people. It's for everyone that He has created. And He says it multiple times in different ways in His Word. I had said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Also, He said, "Remain in me." He used the vine and the branches as an example of how we should see our relationship with Him, as this anchor of this place that we should remain. And then us being the branches out from Him, we have to stay connected and anchored to Him in that place. And then everything that we do, everything that flows through that, all of the fruit that comes from that, is because of the goodness of God in our lives. It's not from anything that we have done. The branch cannot produce fruit on its own. It has to stay connected to that vine. And so when we remain in that place with Him, only goodness will come from that.
Yeah. I think that's why the internal worship is such a hard piece for us, right? Because we're so obsessed with doing instead of remaining.
Exactly.
That we can't, we can't make the time, or we think we can't make the time. We think we're too busy. We think maybe, I don't know if anybody relates to this, but maybe we think we won't actually hear from Him if we make that time to remain. I really appreciated in your sermon that you even talked about how we get into this mode of doing and doing and doing, and then it's not until we're almost burnt out that we turn and start to think there must be something wrong with the way I'm operating, with this operating system I'm using, that I'm in this place of burnout instead of this place of remaining and rest. So I really appreciated that thought.
Yeah, and I should say as well, while we're talking about this, that God is God, and in His infinite wisdom, He is still teaching us and molding us and growing us. It continues on in the verses that talk about remain in me, and I will remain in you, but it also talks about His pruning later on, and God will prune us in different ways. And so sometimes when we seek Him out and we're doing everything that we can to remain, we feel like, I'm not hearing anything. God, where are you? And that is a teaching season as well. That I want to put that out there for those of you who feel like, I do sit with God, I don't hear from God all the time, and I feel like maybe this is not the connection point for me. Let me just tell you, God is looking for your obedience and for your intention, and He looks at your heart, and He is growing us. John posted something the other day from Mother Teresa that was saying that prayer is not necessarily for us to command God or for us to tell God to do things. Prayer is to change us. And then when God changes us, then we can do things. And, when we are striving and trying to do so many things in our own strength and
energy.
Energies and our own understandings of what's going on in the world, we get exhausted.
Yeah.
And there's no way to continue doing that and functioning. But if we just seek God and his peace, I truly believe that he will meet you there. And even if it's not in a vocal way, or even if it's not a time of overwhelming, I can feel God's presence, I know he's with me. It's the understanding that you learn from being obedient and going back to that place that you know from reading his word and from trusting him that he's with you. And in those moments of maybe I don't feel him right now, but I know he is, because I know his word and I know him and he is with me. I need to, I need to just stay with it and be obedient.
That's good.
Yeah, I call, those moments where you're with somebody and after you're done you feel all energized. It could be like something you're dreaming about together, or it could just be they bring so much levity. It's this people fuel. And I feel like that's the same when we get into a place where we're working in the right operating system, our worship of God feels like fuel. Like when we are aware that this is at work, we're worshiping God. It starts to fuel our soul, and it just feels different than just working from a place of burden, right? I have to do this. It's different when I know that in my life, I was telling Candace this, that when Candace and I are in good relationship and we're spending time together, everything else seems so much easier. And I told her today, I just need to make sure that we're good, because our life could be a little chaotic. And so I think in the same way, and not even the same way, in such a greater way, do we have that relationship with God that we are good, and then everything else, and that's so true. When I'm right with God, or I'm connected with God, fueling from this operating system, usually my relationship with my wife is so much better, because it's from a place of humility, a place of serving. It's just loving, right? And in that same way, has church, has singing and worshiping God, has our serving become a burden to us. And I would say it's a burden because our operating system of worship is messed up.
Absolutely.
I'm doing for you. You guys have already said it. It's the striving instead of being, and I think that's a big deal. I think that's a huge deal. And so when you were talking about work, and when you were talking about just being burnt out, that really connected with me. So I just want to take it from here. What does it look like to practice this in your life personally as well? And I would follow that up with, what are the roadblocks in your lives that keep you from worshiping God freely? I don't know if that's the right word, but boldly, freely, connectedness. I don't know.
I had said earlier that intentionality is huge. So if I don't just have it in my mind that first part of the day,
Schedule it.
yes, that first part of the day is set aside for God.
Yeah.
When I wake up, the craziness of the day can take over. If I don't say, this time is for God, yes, no matter what is happening. And I know that there's days that are crazy and you might have something scheduled, then find a different time. Yeah. It's about the intentionality and the obedience to continue doing it. Just make sure that you're spending time in your day. If your morning is crazy, your night, your afternoon, wherever you have, the time to put in there. If you say, I absolutely can't, I have to get up for work at 4.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand. I have my kids with me 24 hours a day. I have to be intentional about my time being for God and telling God, I am intentionally making time for you in this craziness. I call it pockets. I find pockets where I give, to God, or I have to say, stop. Stop what I'm doing right now. This day is out of control and I did not connect to God. What is happening? And so I reconnect and I just sit and I listen and I ask God to surround me with his presence and bring me peace. And then I say, God, I invite you into this moment. Be with me in this day. And I'm teaching my children as well. Before we pray for school, we invite God into our school and into this, this time where it could get frustrating and it could become a mundane thing that we just go through. God, we invite you here. We invite your presence to be here with us now. We invite God when we go skating. We invite you to, go skating with us and be with us and help us to have good attitudes and be good friends. Like, it's the intentionality of saying, I'm connecting with God on purpose because I want to live my life from this place of rest, no matter what's going on out here, because I know crazy is going to happen. It does. Our life is crazy. It's going to happen. But if I am anchored to God, the storm can swirl, but I am at peace. I am at rest because he's with me.
Yeah. It's like an awareness of, like constant awareness of, yeah. That's good. And what would you say a roadblock is for you then?
I mean,
I guess you kind of said it. It's like
yeah,
when you don't schedule it.
Exactly.
Then it gets into
exactly.
chaos.
Or
Okay.
if I allow, the thinking of, what if I just put it off until later today because this morning just seems like it's too much. It's too crazy. We'll have time later on today. Then later on that day, I'm exhausted. My kids are crazy. It's excuses, it's feelings, it's emotions, and I lose my intentionality and I lose that will and that drive to make important the things that should be the most important.
Yeah, that's good. How about for you, Hannah? Well, what are some things that you do personally, and what are some roadblocks for you personally?
I really like what Jen said about intentionality, and I think consistency goes along with that. Like sometimes I think we, not just the busyness of life, but we don't have a good comprehension of how habits are formed. And so we think, if we do it once in a while or when I remember or whatever else, that this will just come to be. But it takes a lot of consistency to just be like, no, every day for however long I'm going to connect with God. People even talk about like, hey, if you have the ability to, and this is helpful for me, do it in the same place. Do have some sort of ritual even. I'm not talking about weird rituals, but have some sort of ritual that you do, that you connect with this time with God, so that you can be like, okay, every morning when I sit down with my pour over or, whatever it
Which
is
very important.
with my coffee, or I sit near this window. I know John talks about that. For me, it's a particular chair in the corner of my room. I sit in that place and I open up the Bible and I read the Bible and I try to spend some time in silence. So I think that's a really important thing, is just to have that consistency, and not only in time, but it could be helpful for you guys even to try a consistency of place.
I like that.
What is a place where I can do that? But also acknowledging and realizing that life is different for everyone.
Right.
When Jen was talking about, connecting with God with her girls as she's going places, the first thing I thought of was just really sweet memories of my mom connecting with us on our way to school every day. And she would always play a worship song and pray for our day. And I, as a kid, you don't realize how valuable that is. But for people listening who may have a schedule that's more like that, where you don't feel like there is a consistent place or time that's stationary, not while you're driving the car or whatever, you can try something like that. But I think making it a routine is really important. One of the roadblocks I thought of immediately was just that emotion piece. I think it's really easy to get discouraged that if I did not feel I heard
Yeah.
something from God, or if
sure.
I did not feel his overwhelming presence or like I'm super energized for the day or
Yeah.
whatever else, then it means it didn't work and I shouldn't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And getting past that roadblock was a huge, huge thing for me, just to realize that God does speak through times of silence. God speaks through times where he is just expecting you to come in obedience and sit in silence with him. Even just the idea of thinking through what a relationship looks like and knowing that sometimes with people, the people you know really, really well, sometimes you just sit in silence with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're just maybe sharing about your feelings and that's all it is, and that's okay. That's an important part of your day, whether or not you feel that overwhelming emotion connected to it.
Yeah.
So if you guys are getting started with this and you don't feel that, it's not because you're doing it wrong.
Exactly.
So just keep that in mind.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I would say for me, and then we're talking about inward worship here, like more contemplative, more like our resting place with God, or like a resting heartbeat. What is your heartbeat with God, right? I'm changing metaphors here from operating system to resting heartbeat. But I would say that, like Hannah said, it's habitual, and it takes me back to the quote, "Who are you becoming?" by Dallas Willard. Because who we become is what we do every day. What you do today is your tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so if we want to become someone connected with God, we should be connecting with God, right? When we feel it and when we don't feel it, we were talking about those emotions. And also I was thinking about how important silence is. Learning to be strong in silence, and learning to like enjoy silence. Silence for me is a personal practice, but it's a way of, if I'm silent for like 15 minutes, everything in my mind begins to spew out the things I'm kind of holding back from God, and I'm like, oh yeah, that place in my life, you see that, and oh yeah, that thought, that relationship I haven't taken care of, you see that. So I sit in silence for a while, and then I'll just write things that are coming to mind as my goal is to wait on God. And as we're waiting on God, he is I don't know what exactly is happening, but all these things begin to spew out of like what I'm trying to hold back and say, God, look how together I am. And it's just like, all right, here, and here. And I feel like it's that important. I think it was Eugene Peterson who said, you can't pray without silence. And that really struck me because I never was silent, like until much later in my walk with God. I'd be yapping. I would have this long list of things that I needed to pray about because the needs are always great. But I think it's really, really, I don't even think, I know it's really important to just wait and just know that he is God Almighty. Like when we're in silence, when I'm in silence, I'll speak for myself, I begin to realize who God is and who I am, and I'm like, wow, there's an awe, a wow factor that starts to happen in my silence. And then from there, that operating system is set in place. Like I know who God is, I know who I am, and I'm just grateful to be on the ride, to be in the story. And I would say my greatest roadblock is my phone. Like, bar none. I can wake up at 4 a.m. every day. I could do all these things, but I love consuming information. And I have this like addiction to like anything that just gives me a lot of information, from YouTube to Reddit, all these things. And I need to, podcasting, I need to shut those things down and learn how to remain and sit in silence and sit in God's word and stare at creation. We talked about ways that we can see God, creation in other people and in God's word. And that is so important for us to see God clearly before we consume all this information. And there's nothing wrong with information. It's just I find the amount of information I consume and I don't act upon has become a roadblock. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I would say that is, dang you, YouTube. I blame you. Right?
So to keep your phone turned off.
Yeah. Don't even, maybe keep it outside the room. I know one thing I do is I read my Bible on my phone, and then it's so easy to flip over to something, and then I tell myself, after like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I was like, how did I flip over? And now I'm watching this thing. Yeah, because I was wanting to know what sanctification was, and I ended up watching stocks or something, you know? So I blame my ADHD, but it's on me. I should just take that phone and put it somewhere else. Yeah.
I think you definitely have to know you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it that will distract you?
For sure.
You know, I have to shut my door, and when my kids know when mom's door is shut, mom's with God, don't
Yeah.
bother mom.
Yeah.
You know? So I mean, not that my kids are a distraction, because I love my kids.
Oh,
My
but
kids
they
are
can
always,
be. Yeah.
you know, my kids are always with me, and though I love that, I need my time alone
You do.
with God. So I make it a point to have the discussion. When the door is shut, mom's with God, no one come in the room.
Yeah.
You know, I think you just have to know the things that will come in and distract, things that will interrupt, and you have to set those things in place beforehand. But it's all who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Don't copy me. That's good.
Jinx.
Jinx. Well, thank you for joining us on this conversation. One big thing I would ask for you guys to do is read John 15 and just read it maybe twice and just sit with it and think of how we could abide in God, because as we abide in God, He abides in us, that we would have fruit and fruit that would last. And I think that is really, really important for our purpose, who we are, and our relationship with God. So God bless you guys, and thanks for joining us.